Your show will go live in 5 seconds. 3, 2, 1.
All right. Well, good afternoon, everybody. There we go. Just had to mute Robert real quick. This is another episode of the Real Interfaith Dialogue on Blog Talk Radio, the Global Patriot Radio Network. And also here in our Zoom room, we are calling ourselves the Cross and the Crescent discussion group. We have this show every week on Sunday afternoons at 2 p.m. Central Standard Time, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we usually go for about 2 hours. Some weeks we go a little bit less, some weeks we go a little bit longer, but since we're not constrained by the airwaves and things of that nature and FCC licensing, we can go as long as we want. This week's topic, we're going to be talking about whether or not Muhammad leads Muslims on the right path. Does Muhammad lead Muslims on the right path? Now, unfortunately, our guest, Royalson, oh my goodness, speak of the devil, Royalson has just popped into the room, coming in at the last second. And I'm going to tell you something that's funny. We were on a Skype call earlier this afternoon, or maybe it was this morning. I think it was this morning, about 10 o'clock my time, Central Standard Time. And we were talking about Isaiah 53, and Royalson picks up the phone. Now, where Royalson is, it's like, oh, dark 30, and he's like, hello? What are you guys talking about? So we were thinking that maybe perhaps he had gone back to sleep. But I see he's wide awake. He's got a big grin on his face. So today, Royalson is once again going to expound on this topic. Are Muslims on the right path? Is what they have, their Allah, their Muhammad, their Quran, does that lead them to Jannah, to heaven? Last week we spoke pretty extensively about Allah, but based on my conversations with everybody in the group, it sounds like we didn't even scratch the surface. But we need to keep rolling along. We can't get too far down in the weeds, because sometimes when we do that, it goes right over the top of people's heads, and I get it. So this week we're going to start with Muhammad. Royalson, can you do a mic check? I see you got yourself mute. Let me unmute you too. There you go.
Right. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. What is that in the background? That's like a beautiful background. That's not like a green screen, is it? That looks it looks like you got this view of
Auckland. That's Auckland City in the background there.
Oh wow, it's beautiful. I don't know if I'd want to live there, because it's winter there now, isn't it? Is it, or late fall?
Yeah, getting close to winter. I guess we are winter now. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh well. You got to do your time. We're just coming out of ice, and it was 80. Well, not quite 80, but it was nice and warm yesterday. We were out following Robert's example of him out tooling around on his motorcycle yesterday, and it was just absolutely beautiful. And we'll probably end up doing that again later this week. All right. So, Royalson, without further ado, we're going to hand the mic to you, and you're going to lead this conversation today. If you have a question and you are in the chat, go ahead, or you're in the room, just go ahead and press that button at the bottom where it says you want to participate, where it raises your hand, and I'll put you in the queue when we bring you in, and you can ask whatever questions. As long as you're on topic, don't be asking about, the weather in down under. Nobody cares. But what we want to do is we want to keep it on topic about if Muhammad leads people on the right path. All right, Royalson, the mic is yours, sir. Go.
All right. Thank you very much, Eric. God, our Father, we just thank you for giving us another day to come before you and to worship you. We thank you for sending us your Son, Jesus Christ. We thank you for every blessing that you have blessed us with. And Lord, we'd like to honor you during this time. We ask you to grant us a spirit of wisdom and revelation in the full knowledge of your Son. Father, as we touch many of the items, we ask you to cover us and protect us and cause us to be under your provision of the Holy Spirit that would guide us into all the reality. And we ask this prayer in the name of your dear Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you.
Well, as Eric said, we touch upon Allah as a guide. Last week, we were looking under the general subject of whether Muslims are on the true path And this is divided into several different sections. The first being Allah. Does Allah sufficiently guide Muslims? Today's topic is on Muhammad. Is Muhammad a sufficient guide for Muslims? I don't know how far we'll get. Perhaps we'll look at in the future the Quran. Is the Quran a sufficient guide for Muslims? So anyway, as we come to this topic about Muhammad, I do want to say to our Muslim friends, we welcome you to this session. We invite you to participate, and know that we do not intend to insult or to offend anybody. However, we are treading on sacred ground, you could say. So we're going to look at some of your very cherished, very heartfelt beliefs, and we're going to challenge those beliefs. And feel free, if you disagree with the content that is being discussed, come up. We like to have a good discussion. With that, I'm going to basically start off by looking at Muhammad from the very beginning of his ministry. And you could say that this beginning should really set the scene for what our view is concerning Muhammad and the message that he brought. Now, I'm not going to his childhood. There are some sources that talk about Muhammad's earlier life. I'm not going to look at that today. What I'm looking at really is the beginning point of Islam, where Muhammad receives his initial revelation in a cave at Mount Hira. And so what I would like to do is just give a few references so that people can follow. I always like you to check through the things. Don't just believe whatever is being said. Go and do your homework. Go and check out the sources, okay, to verify the veracity of what's being said. So the first, we're going to look at Hadith. And for those who are new, Hadith really refers to the life and the sayings of Muhammad as recorded by his companions and narrated by those who are trustworthy or considered to be trustworthy narrators. So we have Sahih Bukhari, which is considered by and large the most reliable hadith collection. Sahih Bukhari, we have volume 6, book 60, and number 479 and 480. So just again, Sahih al-Bukhari, volume 6, book 60, number 479 and 480. And
hey, Royalson, before people understand that don't understand what Sahih means, Sahih means that these are the most trusted or most authentic narrations from all of the hadith that are out there. There are several people that did compile hadith, but the two most trusted are Sahih Bukhari, who is the most trusted, and Sahih Muslim. So, whether or not we believe that these are true or not, that does not matter. What does matter is that the majority of your Muslim world, Sunni specifically, trust that these are the most authentic and can be the most trustworthy narrations about Muhammad.
Correct. Yeah, thank you for pointing that out. So, yeah, Muslim scholars do grade the hadiths according to what they consider to be their trustworthiness, and that usually goes by two particular criteria. One is the chain of narrators. The people who are in the chain of narrators, those who first received the saying and then pass them on all the way up to the final narrator, are those people considered to be trustworthy and reliable. And then the second criteria is really to look at the content itself. Is it something that agrees with the Quran, or does it disagree with the Quran? Is it something that makes the message of Islam look bad or look good or whatever? So they take into consideration various different criteria. And we could speak a lot about that. However, suffice to say, Sahih al-Bukhari, as per the name, does refer to the strongest grade, you could say, of hadiths. So with that being said, that first reference I've given, which is volume 6, book 60, number 479 and 480, say, and I'm paraphrasing, that the beginning of Muhammad's inspiration or revelation came in the form of dreams. And an angel told Muhammad to read, and he said, "What shall I read?" So it's very important to recognize the connection that's made here, that Muhammad first received his revelation by means of a dream. Okay, and now a lot of people don't realize this. Even a lot of Muslims don't realize this. They thought that what Muhammad received was just in a live encounter. However, as this hadith makes very clear, what took place was actually a dream. Now, other hadiths go on to say that, what happened in the dream came true in daylight. So there's a correlation between the dream and what happened later on. But for the intents and purposes of the discussion, what happened at the beginning for Muhammad is that he received his revelation by the way of a dream. Now, I, as a Christian, have no problem with this. I believe that a dream is a perfectly reasonable and valid way in which God can convey revelation, because we see this in the Bible. We see that God gave revelation of his message to various people throughout the scriptures by means of dreams. So I'm not here to say that I have any problem with the idea of receiving revelation in a dream. That's not my point. Then you can have a look also. I'll give another reference here. So this is from the same hadith collection, Bukhari, Sahih Bukhari, and it's from volume 1, book 1, number 3. And I'll just put the reference in there in the chat.
I have it on the screen
also,
too.
You've got that one for verse 2, for number 2.
This is book 1, hadith 3 is up on the screen right now.
Yeah. Okay.
Is that the one you were talking about?
Yeah, that looks like it there. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So here it says, the commencement of the divine inspiration through Allah's messenger was in the form of good dreams, which came true like bright daylight, and then the love of seclusion was bestowed upon him. He used to go in seclusion in the cave of Hira, where he used to worship Allah alone, continuously for many days, before his desire to see his family. He used to take with him the journey food for the stay, and then come back to his wife Khadija to take his food likewise again, till suddenly the truth descended upon him while he was in the cave at Hira. The angel came to him and asked him to read. The Prophet replied, "I do not know to read." The Prophet added, "The angel caught me forcefully and pressed me so hard that I could not bear it anymore. He then released me and again asked me to read, and I replied, I do not know how to read. Thereupon he caught me again and pressed me a second time. I could not bear it anymore. He then released me again and asked me to read. I replied, I do not know how to read, or what shall I read? Thereupon he caught me for the third time and pressed me and then released me and said, read in the name of your Lord, who has created all that exists, created man from a clot. Read, and your Lord is the most generous. So here in this hadith, and I've only read a part of it here, but here you could see there's quite a terrifying situation where Muhammad's receiving some kind of revelation from supposedly the angel Gabriel, you know, the same one who would say, peace be to you, don't be afraid, in the Gospels. This one now is appearing to Muhammad and saying, read, and telling him 3 times to read, when Muhammad's saying, hey, I don't know how to read. So already this brings up a bit of a question mark as to why would you have this spirit from God, sent from God, to someone who's illiterate? How do you expect them to read if they're illiterate? And so it's a bit of a question mark. Did this spirit really come from God or not? And then you'd also see, if you just bring up that hadith again, if you just bring up the page again, you'll realize that following this encounter, Muhammad was very terrified. He ran to his wife Khadija. It says, then Allah's messenger returned with the inspiration and with his heart beating severely. Then he went to Khadija bint Khuwaylid and said, cover me, cover me. They covered him till his fear was over. And after that, he told everything that happened and said, I fear that something may happen to me. Khadija replied, never, by Allah. Allah will never disgrace you. You keep good relations with your kith and your kin, help the poor and the destitute, serve your guests generally, and assist the deserving, calamity-afflicted ones. Khadija then accompanied him to her cousin Waraq bin Nawfal bin Asad bin Abdul Uzza, who, during the pre-Islamic period, became a Christian and used to write the writing with the Hebrew letters. He would write from the gospel in Hebrew as much as Allah wished him to write. He was an old man and had lost his eyesight. Khadija said to Warqa, listen to the story of your nephew, O cousin. Warqa asked, O my nephew, what have you seen? Allah's messenger described whatever he had seen. And Warqa said, this is the same one who keeps the secrets, Angel Gabriel, whom Allah sent to Moses. I wish you were young, and I wish that I were young and could live up to the time when your people would turn you out. Allah's messenger asked, will they turn me out? Will they drive me out? Warqa replied in the affirmative and said, anyone or any man who came with something similar to what you brought was treated with hostility. And if they should remain alive to the day when you be turned out, then I would support you strongly. And then it says a few days later, Warqa died. So here we could see very clearly that Muhammad, he has this dream and he's terrified. He thinks something terrible is going to happen to him. Well, there's a little bit of a problem because Muhammad himself talks about dreams and how can we know which dreams to trust? Because it's pretty important, right? If this dream is going to form the very beginning of the revelation that Muhammad receives, we got to test it out, right? And so if you have a look in, I'll give this reference. This is from Bukhari, volume 9, book 87, number 114. Okay, so in this particular hadith, Muhammad gives the criteria, and he basically says, if any one of you has a dream that he likes, he should thank Allah for it, right? Because it's from Allah, and he should, narrate it to others. But if it's a dream that he does not like, then it is from Satan. Okay, so let's take a step back here. A dream that you like is from Allah, and you should thank Allah for it. A dream that you don't like is from Satan. Now, I'm not going overboard. I'm not embellishing anything. But suffice to say, this dream that Muhammad had, he didn't like. He thought something terrible was going to happen to him. And he was in fear. His neck muscles were twitching in terror. His heart was beating very strongly after having been pressed so so strongly in the dream. So this was basically a nightmare. Well, according to Muhammad, this dream came from Satan. So we've got to ask ourselves, why would we trust a spirit, a dream that is from Satan, and then base all our belief in the revelation that follows from this same source? And so that should put already a huge red light and cause us to question the veracity or the you could say the source of this dream as being divine. Certainly does not seem to be divine by Muhammad's standards. I'd just like to point out, and someone can perhaps type the reference into the chat box. There is a reference in which Muhammad says that the witness of a woman is worth half that of a man. Now, I don't say this to offend the ladies that are listening. This is just what Muhammad himself has said. The witness of of a woman is worth half that of a man. And he gives his reason. He said, this is due to the deficiency in her mind. So let's just have a look at the situation. You've got Muhammad. He's had a bad dream. According to his criteria, it's from Satan. You got Khadija, his wife, saying, this is not, this is from Allah. Yet, Khadija's testimony would be half that of Muhammad. And she wasn't even present at the cave at Hira, right? So we have to ask ourselves the question, who do we trust? Should we trust Muhammad's testimony, or should we trust Khadija's testimony? If you're going to follow Islam and just accept that this is something from Allah, and you're disbelieving what Muhammad is saying, and you actually have to take Khadija's word over Muhammad's word. But obviously, according to Muhammad's criteria, if you really revere him as some kind of truthful person, then you'd have to dismiss the very revelation that he received from the very beginning. Now, a number of Muslims would object to this. They'll say, well, this wasn't a dream, this is something that happened, in a live encounter. Well, apart from the fact that I have already disproved that theory, and by showing the hadith from Bukhari itself, where it says that the commencement came in the form of dreams, and then directly linked it to the encounter with the angel or the spirit. You can also cross-reference this with the biography of Muhammad by Ibn Ishaq. And in there, it says that the inspiration came to Allah's apostle while he was asleep. And then it says that after the spirit vanished or disappeared, Allah's apostle awoke from his sleep. So putting it all together, it's very clear that this was not a live encounter. And any Muslim who would try to say otherwise, I would challenge them to prove it from the texts that I have given, or some other text, and you have to tell us why that hadith is better from this hadith, which is graded as sahih.
This is on page 106, Wilson, of the
page 106. Yeah,
the
reason why I didn't give the reference to the Ibn Ishaq is because there are different translations of the biography, and I don't think it's cataloged in the same way.
Okay.
As the hadith.
Well, this one right here, this translation by Guillaume.
Yeah.
How do you pronounce that? Guillaume?
I think it's Guillaume or something. Yeah.
It sounds French.
Yeah, that's right. So yeah, you can check that out. And what's interesting is it also shows that this was definitely something where Muhammad was being asked to read, because it says that a coverlet of brocade was given to Muhammad. So a piece of cloth was given to Muhammad, and some writing was on it. And it was given to him, and he was told, read. So this is not merely, I want you to recite. There are a lot of Muslims will say, oh, Muhammad was just asked to recite. No, he was given this piece of cloth with the writing on it and told to read. So how is it that you've got this supposed angel of God who acts in a very different way to the Gabriel of the Gospels, now forcing Muhammad, causing fear and all kinds of things to Muhammad, telling him to read when he can't read. And as I said, that this very dream itself is disqualified as being of divine origin, because if anything, by Muhammad's own criteria, then it's from Satan. So we're just going to move on a little bit from here. I think it should, I just want to point out, just to emphasize, this is at the beginning of Muhammad's ministry, okay? So if anyone was to really be discerning, they'd say, okay, I'm going to quit while I'm not too far behind. I don't want to get tangled up in this kind of dark revelation, because Muhammad's already warned us at the beginning. He had his criteria. I should pay attention to it, because here's the point. Either Muhammad's criteria is accurate or it's not accurate. If it's accurate, then you should dismiss the Quran, because it's from Satan according to his criteria. If his criteria is inaccurate, then we still can't trust him, because if we can't trust him as to what kind of revelation is from God or not, then we shouldn't be trusting him as a prophet at all. And that's the dilemma that Muslims are really in. But you know, that's from the beginning of Muhammad's ministry. But you know, throughout his ministry, he received revelations. And if you have a look at some of the hadith, at the kind of revelation that he received, this should also put up some question marks. So let me just turn to some of those references. Okay, so it says here that this is from Surah 69, verse 44 to 46. Surah 69, verse 44 to 46. And in it,
Hello,
says,
you stupid cunt. Hello. You fucking think Islam's wrong, you stupid bitch. You're gonna go to hell.
Maybe we need to mute the room. We can just mute the room while I'm talking, and then we won't have any interruptions. So sorry to our audience.
He's a troll. Yeah. Troll. There you go.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, so it says here, and if he, Muhammad, had forged a false saying concerning us, Allah, we surely would have seized him by the right hand, or with power and might, and then certainly should have cut off his life artery, his aorta. And this is from Surah 69, verse 44 to 46. And then we have a hadith. Again, this is from Bukhari. Notice I'm giving you these top hadiths. Yeah, this is graded Sahih. Narrated Aisha. The reference, volume 5, book 59, number 713. That's volume 5, book 59, number 713. And it says, narrated Aisha, the Prophet in his ailment in which he died used to say, "Oh Aisha, I still feel the pain caused by the food I ate at Khaybar. And at this time, I feel as if my aorta is being cut from that poison." So this is Muhammad. He's dying from poison that he ate, and he describes it as his aorta being severed or being cut. The very same method that Allah has pointed out that, you know, if Muhammad was a false prophet, this is what Allah would do to Muhammad. So now we're not just at the beginning of his ministry, we're now looking at the end of his ministry. This is what happened, is that he was dying in this very way. What about in between? So we've got the two ends of Muhammad's ministry. What about in between? Is there anything else that gives us a sign, hey, just don't trust this guy? All right.
Fuck you, son of a bitch. Fuck you, royal son.
So,
You fuck.
I think a lot of people are getting quite upset by this.
He's off.
Yeah.
He's gone.
And you know, as I said, we are going to be touching on matters that are going to be offensive to some people, and we we invite people who can discuss in a civil manner, to ask questions or to discuss these things. But if they're just going to insult, it shows us that perhaps we're touching a nerve here. All right. Okay. So if we have a look, what about throughout Muhammad's life, from after his first revelation and before his death? Is there anything else, any other warning signs that tell us do not trust this man? And of course there is. If you have a look, I'll give a reference again. Sahih Bukhari, volume 4, book 54, number 490. That's Bukhari, volume 4, book 54, number 490. It says, magic, this is narrated by Aisha, magic was worked on the Prophet so that he began to fancy that he was doing a thing which he was not actually doing. On the day he invoked Allah for a long period and then said, I feel that Allah has inspired me as to how to cure myself. 2 persons came to me in my dream and sat, one by my head and the other by my feet. One of them asked the other, what is the ailment of this man? The other replied, he has been bewitched. The first asked, who has bewitched him? The other replied, Lubayd bin al-Assam. The first one asked, what material has he used? The other replied, a comb, the hair gathered on it, and the outer skin of the pollen of the male date palm. The first asked, where is that? The other replied, it is in the well of Darwan. So the Prophet went out towards the well, and then he returned to me and said on his return, the date palms near the well are like the heads of the devils. I asked, did you take out those things with which the magic was worked? He said, no, for I have been cured by Allah, and I am afraid that this action may spread evil amongst the people. Later on, the well was filled up with earth. So here, according to this hadith, Muhammad he had another dream, and this is another satanic one, right? Because it says he was bewitched. And in this time, he thought that he was being taught how to cure yourself, how to find different cures. Well, we know that there's a number of strange hadiths, and maybe some of our panel can talk about these, where Muhammad finds these unusual cures or things related to health and medicine. According to this hadith, Muhammad received such revelations while he was being bewitched. I just see a verse that's being posted in the room, which says, this is from Veritas Seeker 22:52, and we did not send before you any messenger or prophet except that when he spoke for or recited, and Satan threw into it some misunderstanding, but Allah abolishes that which Satan throws in, and Allah makes precise his verses, and Allah is knowing and wise, and all so here, according to this verse from the Quran, so this is not hadith, this is the Quran, Satan would actually throw his verses into the Quran, and then Allah would have to kind of abolish them, but they would actually end up in the Quran itself, and showing that Satan actually had the ability to corrupt and you could say embellish the Quran with certain revelations. How many revelations did Muhammad actually tell his followers while he was bewitched? We don't know. We don't know how many those were, but suffice to say, this should be a huge alarm bell for us. Don't follow this guy. Now, this hadith is mirrored by another one, which much shorter, where it says in Bukhari, volume 4, book 53, number 400, and this is again narrated by Aisha, once the Prophet was bewitched so that he began to imagine that he had done a thing which he in fact had not done. Now there's, in fact, there's other hadiths that are very closely related to this. Maybe some people can type the references into the chat box. Actually, it talks about how Muhammad, when he was bewitched and he thought he was doing things which he hadn't done, it elaborates. And it says he thought he was having intercourse with his wives when he had not. So it just makes you wonder, who was he having intercourse, or what was he having intercourse with while he was bewitched? And I think what's important to note here, and I'm not saying this to give shock value or something like this, or to be obscene. Notice I'm not using any vulgar language. But what I'm saying is that if it would come to the point where Muhammad doesn't even know who he is having intercourse with, it's got to be some pretty powerful magic, right? Because your wife is someone very close, very intimate to you. But if you think that you are having intercourse with your wife when it's not your wife, it tells you you are under a huge influence, demonic or satanic influence. And because of that, would make it very, very dubious to receive any kind of revelation from Muhammad. Okay, I'll give one more particular matter that is related to Muhammad's receiving of revelation, and that is found in Sahih Muslim now. Now, don't think that, oh, this is not Bukhari, this is not trusted. Sahih Muslim is also recognized as a very authentic hadith collection, hence why it's called Sahih Muslim. And this is in book 24, number 5279. So that's book 24, number 5279. And this hadith, it's a short one. It says, Abu Huraira reported Allah's messenger as saying, the bell is a musical instrument of Satan. I'll say that again. The bell is a musical instrument of Satan. Now, you've got to wonder, okay, Muhammad didn't like bells. What's up with that? Maybe he didn't like, the Christians meeting in the churches where there were bells, and obviously having a different thought to his revelation. However, this is what it says here. So if this bell is the instrument of Satan, we've got to think, surely Muhammad did not have any revelations with bells in them, right? Since that would be the instrument of Satan. Well, according to Sahih Bukhari, volume 1, book 1, number 2, this is narrated again by Aisha, the mother of the faithful believers. Al-Harith bin Hisham asked Allah's apostle, "Oh, Allah's apostle, how is the divine inspiration revealed to you?" Allah's apostle replied, "Sometimes it is revealed like the ringing of a bell. This form of inspiration is the hardest of all, and then this state passes off after I have grasped what is inspired. Sometimes the angel comes in the form of a man and talks to me, and I grasp whatever he says." Aisha added, "Verily, I saw the Prophet being inspired divinely on a very cold day and noticed the sweat dropping from his forehead as the inspiration was over." So here you have Muhammad, he's sweating after receiving this revelation with a bell, which is supposedly the instrument of Satan. I've got another hadith, which is volume 4, book 54, number 438. Narrated Aisha, Al-Harith bin Hisham asked the Prophet, "How does the divine inspiration come to you?" He replied, "In all these ways. The angel sometimes comes to me with a voice which resembles the sound of a ringing bell. And when the state abandons me, I remember what the angel has said, and this type of inspiration is the hardest on me, and sometimes the angel comes to me in the shape of a man and talks to me, and I understand and remember what he says." Okay, so what I want to do is I really want to put this to our Muslim friends that are here. There are so many other things that we could talk about, and my Christian brothers and sisters can add to these things that I have not provided. Our Muslim guests, I want you to think. You see at the beginning that Muhammad gives the criteria for a bad dream. Is a dream you don't like, that's from Satan. his very first revelation is a bad dream that he doesn't like. Why would you follow him? Why would you give him any credence for his revelation, right? Why would you take Khadijah's word over Muhammad's word? Secondly, at his death, he dies in the very way Allah prescribes if he was to be a false prophet. Why would you consider after his death that he is to be a prophet that is recognized? But in between that, from his first revelation to his last, where he has these sound of the ringing of a bell, and where he is bewitched, where he thinks he's doing things he's not doing. He's giving cures when he's being bewitched. And some of these have ended up in hadith. Why would you follow such a prophet when he himself is giving you so many warning signs? Guys, follow me. It's so obvious. You should really take these warning signs and you should follow the advice, not from Khadijah, because Khadijah herself was not present. She was not a witness. And Muhammad said her testimony is worth less than his. So there are so many other things that I could talk about. In fact, let me do one more thing that I'll do.
Hey, Rolson, could I do one? And then you can
sure,
go to
absolutely.
this. Just let me pop this one up on the screen because I speak of this one pretty often. Let me share my screen here. Okay. This comes out of Sahih Bukhari. Let's see here. Sahih Bukhari, volume 4, book 55, hadith 546. And it begins, when Abdullah bin Salam heard the arrival of the Prophet at Medina, he came to him and said, I'm going to ask you about 3 things which nobody knows except a prophet. Which, number one, how is this guy going to know what only a prophet would know if he wasn't a prophet himself? This is the logic that we get. And then what is the first portent of the hour, portent meaning end of times? What would be the first meal taken by people who go to paradise? And what is why does a child resemble its father, and why does it resemble its maternal uncle? So you have 3 questions posed by this this man here who knows what a prophet is, or who only the answers a prophet would know. And so he asked Muhammad this. Now look what happens here. Allah's messenger said, Gabriel has just told me of their answers. Okay, so this is the same Gabriel that is bringing the Quran to Muhammad. Now he's also bringing this answer to Muhammad. So what Muhammad's essentially saying here is that the same guy that gives me the word of God is giving me this revelation. So this revelation has to be sound. Why? Because it's coming from Gabriel, the one that's delivering the Quran to Muhammad. Now look what he says. He says, Abdullah said, he, Gabriel, from amongst the angels is the enemy of the Jews. Got to have a little anti-Semitism there, of course. But then we get to Allah's messenger said, the first portent of the hour will be a fire that will bring together the people from the east to the west. So the end of times will be by fire. Okay, can we prove that? No, we can't prove that unless it is the end of times. The second is the first meal of people in paradise will be extra lobe of fish liver. Can we prove that? No. Have we talked to somebody that's been in heaven? What's the first meal you eat? Well, we have fish liver. Can you prove that? No, you can't do that. But here's where Muhammad gives himself away. He says, as for the resemblance of the child to its parents, if a man has sexual intercourse with his wife and gets discharged first, the child will resemble the father.
Right.
Okay. And if the woman gets discharged first, the child will resemble her. So Gabriel, the angel Gabriel, the one that is delivering the Quran, the revelation of God to Muhammad, is also providing something that we can clearly demonstrate today using modern medicine. That's not true.
Right.
You know, this is genetics.
Right.
So when we start saying that, you know, well, the hadith are not consistent with Muhammad leading people or putting people on the straight path. This one right here saying, hey, look, my angel just came to me just right now and told me this is the answers to those three things. And look what this guy does. On that, Abdullah bin Saled, I testify you are a messenger of Allah. And we trust Sahih, this is Sahih Bukhari. Okay, I'm sorry. Wilson.
Very good.
You have the mic. We also have Christian Prince, or not Christian Prince, Christian Prophet Olga wants to come on. Do you want to go and then let him come on, or do you want to bring him on first?
Well, I'll just, yeah, okay, we can bring him on.
Okay, all right, Olga, let's bring you on. Sir, you have the mic.
Yeah, if you notice too, when Khadija took Muhammad to Warika, whatever his name is, Warika, you have Muslim sources saying that Warika says, oh, you're a prophet and I wish I'd stay around and I would follow you and all this. But there's also other sources that where Warika warned him, saying to him that sometimes devils disguise themselves as Gabriel, and the one, let me find it for you and tell you the source, and the one they possess will become an insane person. So you see it right here. Yeah, this is what Warika said to him. I am afraid it may be someone other than Gabriel, but certain devils imitate him, and by so doing can mislead and corrupt some men. This can result in a man becoming confused and even crazy, whereas before he had been of sound mind. And this is Ibn Kathir, the life of the Prophet Muhammad. And if you look what Muhammad started doing, Muhammad started attempting suicide. And that we can find in Bukhari 9, verse 111. And also, Muhammad started talking stupid stuff. Satan sleep in people's nose, and Satan urinate in people's ears, and the camel, where the camel kneel, that's where Satan sleep, where the camel kneels. Just a bunch of dumb stuff that only mad people would talk about. So you could see, if you look at Ibn Sa'd, the life of the, I think it's called the life of the major class or something like that. In Ibn Sa'd said, Muhammad said to Khadija, I hear voices, I hear noise, and I think I am mad. So you see that what Warika told Muhammad is consistent with what Muhammad believed that was happening to him.
Well, a lot of those, oh God, I didn't want to step on you, but a lot of those hadiths that you're referencing there, that he was suicidal. This is something that is never brought up. It's also kind of interesting. Some of the hadith, and I don't know if you mentioned this, were some of the hadith that reference other verses that were supposedly part of the Quran. One of the most popular ones deals with the satanic verses, where Muhammad received a revelation that was cast upon him, he says, by Satan, for having them to worship the Nabatean gods, Allat, Al-Uzza, and Manat. Also, there's another hadith, if I remember correctly, that deals with how they were lost because I think it was Aisha that narrated this, where she said that they got caught up in when Muhammad had died. Some goat or camel or something, I can't remember which it was. Goat came into her room and ate part of the Quran. This is a hadith that, and it dealt with the stoning of women and breastfeeding. If I believe that. It was those two things. And then there's another hadith, if I'm not mistaken, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, Rolson, that deals with, somebody said that there was over 100 verses missing from one of the chapters of the Quran. So when we start talking about what the hadiths do, and we're not just talking about, some da'if hadiths, we're talking sahih, sound hadiths that are trusted by the majority of Muslims as being authentic. And here's the funny thing about this is that when you go to, and I got into it with some fella this week about how authentic are these hadiths, and I was assuming that he was a Quran only guy, because I threw a couple hadiths out there that make Muhammad not look very well. They're not very they're the ones about him and Aisha, and the ones about him and Zainab, and he just said those are, people are forging those. Aisha was much older. And I'm thinking, well, look, dude, your issue is not with us who say these things. We're just, repeating what your own sources, your own, you guys believe these hadiths. I don't believe them any farther than I could trust them, or trust them any farther than I could throw them. But the fact is that you do believe these. And then now you're going to tell me, even though it says exactly that she was 9, he was 54, and now you're going to try to tell me, oh, no, that's not true, even though that they're Sahih. So it's consistently being inconsistent with the authority of them, and I get it. When these were revealed, evidently, or the Quran was revealed, this was a different time. This is a different culture, and what we're trying to do is we're trying to impose our modernism, our modern culture, our modern values on a different culture and a different time. But here's the problem with that is that Muhammad is the example for them to follow for all time. So if Muhammad did it, then it is perfectly permissible for them to do it. So when we start talking about the marriage age laws across the globe, or within majority Muslim countries, you see how far south that gets pushed simply because of these trusted hadith. So when we start talking about, okay, Muhammad did this, Muhammad did that, we're not just inventing this.
Right.
These are your own sources. And if we look at it as a whole, like Royalson is pointing out here, this is the guy that's supposed to be a pattern of conduct so you can get into Jannah, so you can get to heaven. I don't know. That's kind of a hard one to swallow. Go ahead, Royalson.
Yeah, no, thanks for that. And what's interesting is you see how Khadija fits into all of this, and how she's making the assessment as to whether this is from Allah or not. And I'd really like to know where she gets the criteria from, because certainly we don't see that in Deuteronomy 18, right? What happens is there's a hadith that talks about Khadija telling Muhammad to sit by her side, or sit on her lap, actually. And I believe she removes her garment, and then the angel or the spirit vanishes away. And so she basically concludes that because an angel is too righteous, too pious to view the nakedness of a woman, therefore this spirit must be from Allah. But that, I mean, where do you get that kind of criteria from? Okay, we're going to get you to sit on my lap while I'm taking off my clothes, and we can know what kind of spirit this is. When there's hadith that also talk about, if a man does not, if a woman does not agree to pleasure her husband in bed, then the angels will curse her until the morning. So I don't think the angels are shy about this sort of thing. And I just wonder, why do Muslims take Khadija's word, Khadija's criteria, which is against Muhammad's word and Muhammad's criteria? I think from all accounts, as I said, from the very beginning through his ministry right to the end, there's no reason why we should believe that Muhammad is reliable. Now, one point that I didn't bring up, I'll bring it up now, and maybe someone else can expand on it a bit more, is from Deuteronomy chapter 18. Often Muslims will try to point to this to say that Muhammad is reliable because he's that prophet that's like Moses, that's promised in verse 18. And so they get this whole idea. They try and think of different ways that Muhammad was like Moses, and then they essentially say, look here, see, this proves that Muhammad is that prophet like Moses, therefore you believe in him. Now, of course, this would ignore all the foregoing points that I've already made regarding all these reasons that disqualify him from being a prophet. But the very criteria that Muslims apply to from Deuteronomy chapter 18, very dubious, very like ad hoc. Where did they get these criteria from? It's almost like, Khadija comes up with her criteria, and then Muslims will come up with their criteria to make Muhammad that prophet like Moses. But it's very clear from reading the context, from reading even the very first verse from chapter 18, that God is speaking of the Levites. The Levites, if they come into someone's land and someone's home, then they are to be given a portion of the produce of the land, because they themselves were not given a portion, right? Because it says that Jehovah their God is their portion, or Yahweh their God is their portion. And so with this in view, he's speaking to these Levites. It's in that context that he says, and I will raise up a prophet from among your brethren. So it's very clear that he's not going to start, when he started already talking about the Levites in relation to the other tribes of Israel, that all of a sudden he's going to start talking about the Ishmaelites. There's absolutely nothing in the text that gives any kind of indication that we are talking about an Ishmaelite here. It's still in the context of the Israelites, because the tribe of Levi indeed was one of those tribes.
Hey,
now,
Royalson Veritas had his hand up. I don't know if he wants to opine on this here, or if he's got.
Sure.
I'm going to go ahead and bring him back, or bring
him. Yeah,
on
definitely.
Veritas, you had your hand up, sir. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I want to comment as much as I can, but I want to show respect to Rolson, because, dude, this is a great presentation. Thank you so much. I'm going to go back and listen to this one. So on Deuteronomy 18, I was going to say something about this. I was thinking, I heard the debate between Michael Brown and Nadir.
Nadir Ahmed.
What's his last?
Ahmed.
Yeah, Nadir Ahmed. I couldn't remember. Okay, so I know Nadir. I've seen him before.
Well, we've had Nadir on the show before.
He wants.
We have him on the show.
You have?
Yeah, a week before, him and Michael Brown had that discussion. Yeah, the week before, we had Nadir on the show discussing this very topic right here, Deuteronomy 18:18. And of course, Michael Brown, he's a Hebrew linguist. He just
right.
It was really ugly. And the thing with Nadir is that.
Yeah, he did.
We were just as courteous as we possibly could be with him, but he was getting very frustrated because he kept repeating, "You have to agree that Muhammad is just like Moses, because they were both warrior prophets." And the fact of the matter is, no, they weren't. and you tell him that, and then he started. You can see kept getting more agitated. But go ahead, Veritas. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's a whole nother subject, man. I would love to talk about why Jesus is like Muhammad. Why Jesus is like Moses, as opposed to Muhammad being like Moses. Maybe another day. But just doing research from the Jewish side of the argument, the Jewish traditions and things. There's some fascinating stuff on that. But the other thing was on Deuteronomy. I was just thinking about what Rolson just said, and I remember Nadir making the complaint that the NIV translation, it says here, now this is NIV at Deuteronomy 18:15, the Lord your God will raise up for you a prophet like me from among you, from among your fellow Israelites. Now, Israelites is not in the passage. And he was saying, well, it's trying to lead you into a theological position by inserting a theology. It's inserting a bias there. And because the word is just, your fellow, from among your brothers. It's brothers. It doesn't say Israelites. So why did they use Israelite here? And why did I think there's probably 3 or 4 other translations that inserts the word Israelite. So why would they do that? Well, the next verse tells you why. It says, you must listen to him, for this is what you asked of the Lord your God at Horeb on the day of the assembly. What is that? That's when the 12 tribes were gathered at Sinai, and they were experiencing the presence of God, and they cried out to Moses saying, let us never hear this again. We don't ever want to experience this again. We want to hear God's voice through a prophet. And that was their argument. Don't let us ever hear this again. So it specifically applies to the 12 tribes that were gathered at Sinai when they heard the voice of God. And that's why it inserts the word Israelite there. For this is what you asked of the Lord your God at Horeb on the day of the assembly, when you said, in other words, Israel, the 12 tribes, they all unanimously say, we don't want to experience this anymore. It says, let us not hear the voice of the Lord our God, nor see this great fire anymore, we will die. So it is specifically applied to Israel in that context. So you can't, you can't get outside the box and say it applies to somebody outside of the 12 tribes. It's just impossible in context. But I wanted to say this. Rawson, let me ask you this, if you're there. Can you hear me, man?
Yeah, I can.
Can you hear me? Okay, question. 2252. Do you know of any other, is there any other supporting evidence showing that 2252 was given after the Senate satanic verses were revealed? Because it says this in Tabari. Verses were revealed through Muhammad, and Muhammad acknowledged the gods of the pagan gods of the Quraysh. That is when, according to Tabari, this early Muslim historian, Tabari, the most preeminent early Muslim historian, so that's when God revealed to him Surah 2252. So I was just wondering if you knew of any other tradition that undergirds the fact that it was given chronologically at that time. I mean, that's I'm not.
Yeah,
go ahead.
To be honest, no, I don't. And one of the difficult things about the Quran is that it's so haphazard, that the way that it's organized, it's really like a dog's breakfast, when someone, and I think it was you, Eric, that was talking about the goat that ate two of the surahs. It's like, sorry, teacher, my goat ate my homework. And the Quran itself is really quite a mishmash, and it is difficult to understand really the chronology of how things are revealed. In saying that, you can actually study and look at the hadiths themselves to see the order and the chronology of when the different verses were revealed in conjunction to the satanic verses and Muhammad being bewitched and things like that. But I just,
Absolutely.
I mean, for me, I just have a huge question mark over someone who's,
right.
I mean, can you imagine if the Apostle Paul had this kind of encounter, what kind of thing we would be hearing from Muslims, right? Oh, why do you believe in Paul?
Yeah.
Look, he's bewitched, and he's, there's all these things happening, and he's been said to have said that I've imputed words to God that he has not spoken. According to Deuteronomy 18:18, that would put him to death. You'd have to put him to death for being a false prophet. But when we bring up all of these things, it's almost like it's just, it's completely overlooked by Muslims. I'm not too sure why.
Well, yeah, and what do you conclude from all this? It's like one thing is certain you can conclude from all these traditions, because there's so many streams of thought that he was under, at times in his life, under satanic influence.
Definitely.
So it's like, I read this, I was just thinking about this, and I don't know if you brought it up just then or a few minutes ago, or it just popped into my mind from something I read before, but this is the one from, this is Sahih Bukhari, Volume 7, Book 71, number 660. I don't know if you want to put, you don't have to post it on the screen if you don't want to, Eric, but
I'll put it on.
did you post this or not? I can't remember, but it said narrated Aisha, magic was worked on all his apostles. We know where magic comes from according to Islamic sources, right? So magic was worked on all his apostles, so that he used to think that he had sexual relations with all of his wives. He had sexual relations with his wives while he actually had not. So magic was worked on Paul's apostles, so they used to think that he had sexual relations with his wives when he actually had not. So I'm wondering if that is reflected in, if that tradition is reflected in what Bakari also says when it says found during the day and night, and they were 11 in number. Wives in a daytime, in a period of a day, I guess. You know, in other words, having sexual relations with his wife, because it goes on to sing, it goes on to explain he had the strength of 30 men. So was he actually imagining that? Because Aisha says he used to think that he had sexual relation with his wives and he didn't. And that was because he was influenced by Satan, by magic. You see what I'm saying? What do you think about it?
Yeah.
I think
I brought this up just earlier. I didn't quote.
Okay, that's right.
But
okay.
Can I be heard?
Yeah, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Yes. Okay. Yes.
Yeah. So my point in bringing this up was to show if you can't tell whether the person you are having intercourse with is your own wife, someone who is so close and intimate to you, then imagine how powerful this magic really is. And so, I mean, the fact of the sexual nature of the acts that were going on, that's one thing. And I mean, it does make you think about, okay, if it wasn't his wives, who was it that he was engaging with? Me, I'll tell you what I think. Right. I think that actually this might have been a case of Muhammad just using an excuse to sleep with other women and then blame it on some kind of some kind of magic. But if it was magic, like if we are to take him at his word, then you got a huge problem, because the very fact that the context is in terms of sexual relations and not knowing who it's with, that shows you how deep this magic really is, that it could alter his thinking to that extent, not even know who he's with or what he's doing. So that begs the question: what was he doing? Was he revealing any verses of the Quran? How many of those verses ended up in the Quran? Too many.
Exactly.
Difficulties, Yeah.
Well, you know that what was it, Aisha? What is it, Aisha, that said that that whenever Muhammad wanted something, he would get a convenient revelation from Allah? Wasn't she the one who said that?
Aisha said that.
Yeah, Aisha said that.
Aisha
right?
didn't say that.
Who said it?
Why are you saying that? That's so silly. Aisha never said the word convenient. You made that up, and all this stuff.
Okay, so what is she?
Well,
you guys are just doing this like this rambling
something that it
stuff.
seems that Allah seems to grant every desire, something on the lines of every,
come to
right. What I'm saying is all you guys are doing is about
desires.
You guys are doing like about a half an hour anecdotal nonsense. The Quran says surely the messenger was not possessed. That's like me saying Jesus in the Bible
Hassan,
where it says.
Hold on a second. You said that the Quran says Muhammad wasn't possessed?
Yeah.
But the hadith say he was.
No, this hadith doesn't say nothing about him being possessed.
But he admits.
What I'm saying is you guys are using words and modifying words to mean things that they don't mean. And he was
not. Tabari.
No, we're reading it.
Let me
say them up on the screen and reading them. We are putting them up on the screen.
Let me say something.
And from Muslims,
because this is the problem. This would be like me saying that the Bible says that Jesus was when Jesus was tempted 40 days, right? That would be like me saying it actually says that Satan took Jesus somewhere. That would be like me saying that Satan actually possessed Jesus, because how do you take Jesus somewhere he doesn't want to go? But I wouldn't say that, because that's the kind of foolishness that you guys are using. This is you actually are insulting someone who has got people fasting and praying to God Almighty for a month at a time. And that is so crazy that you use these crazy anecdotes. And listen,
okay, let me ask you
guys,
this.
Wait a minute. I've heard you guys talk for long enough.
But Asana, you came in way late.
I know, but you're repeating yourself.
Let Royalson go. Then you can go ahead. Go ahead, Royalson.
Are you telling me, and John, thank you for joining us, okay? It is good to have you here and your participation. Are you telling me that because someone fasts and prays that automatically that we should just consider them to be people of God? Because you would acknowledge that if people are fasting and praying to the wrong God, then that's a big problem, right?
Do you believe that there are other gods?
I believe that there are false gods.
It's a problem. Look, it's a problem when you even think that there are gods. That is a problem. See,
okay.
that's what
so
I'm
if
saying.
someone
People,
if someone is fasting and praying to Buddha,
you can't interrupt me if you ask me
does
a
that
question.
count?
What I'm saying is that you have what a polytheistic mind frame. This is why Jews insult Christians, because they have a polytheistic mind frame. Once you have a monotheistic mind frame, you realize there's only one creator. There's only one most high. So how we perceive that most high, or how we the way we think about him, or the way we worship the most high, can be various, can be different, right? So and I'll even accept the fact that yes, people can worship God the right way, and people can worship God the wrong way, but they're still only worshiping God. There is no such thing as multiple gods. There's no such thing as my God and your God. The same creator created us both.
Okay.
Do you agree with that? We have the same creator, right?
Yeah, I believe there's only one God, definitely.
No, I said you believe we have the same creator,
that still doesn't answer my question. That still doesn't answer my question. So if someone is worshiping Buddha and fasting and praying to Buddha, does that mean that they're following the one true God?
Buddha is not a god, first of all.
No,
Buddha
that's right.
And Buddha never said he was a god.
So it doesn't count, right?
No, listen, I said Buddha never said he was God. So that's a false narrative.
Okay.
And so what we have to do is understand what we're even talking about, which I don't think you do understand what you're talking about.
Okay.
And I did answer your question when I said to you that there's one God. There are many ways that people worship him. Some may consider that way wrong, or some may consider that way right. Like, for instance, if you believe in a triune God, right? That doesn't make any sense to lots of other people, but you think it's okay. But let me tell you how the triune God cannot be possible.
Well, just sorry, I have to stop you for a moment. No, because you're actually getting off on a different topic.
No, wait a minute.
We need to deal. You're a guest on the show.
Let's stay on
so
topic.
I'm sorry.
Please.
This is not going to be about. This is not going to be about Trinity versus
no. That's not what I'm talking about. I
said
talk
about the Trinity.
You were saying something about God. I said, when Jesus tells you that you can blaspheme him, but you cannot blaspheme the Holy Spirit, and you're saying that Jesus and the Holy Spirit and God are one, how can you blaspheme one part of God without blaspheming all of God?
Hold on.
I'm not talking about what Jesus said.
All right.
I'm sorry I hurt you, but that's the way it is.
All right.
Royalson, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So first of all, you'll notice that we've diverted away from the topic of the discussion.
You diverted away from the topic because the topic was the topic was does Muhammad lead people to the right path? You didn't go to the right path. You started talking about his personal issues.
Osana,
can we move to
Osana? Let him talk. Royalson, go ahead. Guys, let him talk. Go ahead, Royalson.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, the reason why I brought up this thing about fasting and praying toward the only true God is because our friend John Isaac brought it up. He was the one that said, "How you can't do this and mock people who are fasting and praying towards the one true God." My only point was, just because people fast and pray doesn't mean they're praying to the true God. They could be praying to a quote unquote false God. Okay, and what I mean by false God is not that God actually exists, but it exists in their mind. And just as Buddha is not God, I agree. Shiva is not God.
Never said he was.
Right? No, I'm talking so you can listen. Okay, you can listen when I'm finished.
I know it's like a monopoly. It's like a monopoly. I only get to say tiny.
So that's the reason why. At the moment, we're not muting you. At the moment, we're not muting you, but we might have to if you're going to.
It's a monopoly. I understand.
We are going to have to mute you if you're not going to.
I understand it's a monopoly. I already know that.
Now, the next thing is, with regards to speaking about the Trinity, is totally getting off the topic. Okay, I didn't introduce the Trinity. You did. Now, what is the topic? The topic is Muhammad a reliable prophet? Is he a reliable guide for Muslims to be on the straight path? Now, I noticed that you haven't really interacted with the points that I've made. So when I talk about Muhammad having a dream at Hira, which he didn't like, and he said that if you have a dream which you don't like, then it's from Satan, why would you believe that dream? Go ahead.
Okay, why are you not quoting the Quran? You're quoting all these hadiths, but some might be right, some might be wrong. They're all over the place. I can give you, you can give me 10 hadith, I can give you 10 hadith to say the opposite thing. I'm asking you, go to the Quran. You want to talk about Muhammad, you want to talk about the revelation. We don't follow Muhammad, we follow Allah, just like Muhammad did. So you go to the Quran, because that is the different. If you say something from the Quran, I'm not going to debate it. But if you start going all outside the Quran, talking about I heard, and then there was this other book, and somebody wrote this, and there might have been some dreams. I don't care about that. I'm telling you what the Quran says, so you should come from the book. That's like me going, when some people, when they talk about like Mary being young, they have to go outside the Bible and get that from Catholic tradition and so forth. So get to the real books and tell the real truth. Paul said that Satan was a thorn in his side and all sorts of things, but that doesn't mean he was satanic. It just means he felt something was bothering him or whatever, a thorn in his flesh or whatever. But my point is, and I'm not insulting them. I'm saying everybody with their religion, I'm saying that Christianity is a good religion if it's followed correctly and if it's adhered to correctly, not made up with innovations such as the triune God, which is an innovation that is impossible to occur according to Jesus Christ, who said that if you can blaspheme him, but you cannot blaspheme the Holy Spirit, or you will not be forgiven. So if it's Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, and you can blaspheme, you can't blaspheme the Holy Spirit, but you can blaspheme the Son, that means they're not together. They're not equivalents. They're not equal.
Okay, so again, you're starting to talk about the triune God again, which is not the topic of the discussion.
Okay, well, the topic of discussion was yes, I'm saying Muhammad is an excellent person to lead Muslims on the right path, because he teaches us that there's only one God, the Most High, the only Creator, the Sovereign, by himself. There's no one else before him. But that's not even new, because that's what it says in Isaiah, and that's what it says in the Bible.
But you said you don't follow Muhammad.
I just said we follow Muhammad in the sense of Islam, to Allah. We submit to Allah, and we follow what was brought down by him through the revelation. And the revelation don't have all this crazy stuff that you guys bring up as antidotes to try to scare people, but just tell the truth. Say what's in the Quran. Tell only the truth is best for you. Don't say
I got a question, Asana. Are you a Quran only, Asana?
No, I didn't say that either. I'm saying,
well, I mean, it sounds to me here's where we're trying to evaluate your consistency. Let me evaluate your consistency, Asana.
Right.
You're saying that I'm not a Quran only, and then when we start referring to the Hadith, and you say, well, for some reason that you can trust the Hadith, but we can't trust the Hadith. They're all crazy. So when I want to show you Hadith. Hold on a second. Let me just show you.
Well, let me explain to you what I'm saying.
Though,
no, he's still talking.
But let me explain to you what I'm saying, Eric.
Asana, let me just show you this Hadith here, and then you tell me whether or not this is a authentic.
But you didn't listen to what I was going to say.
All right, go ahead.
All right. So what I'm saying is, when anyone brings to me an argument, it has to be based in the Quran first. Then you can go to a Hadith to try to support your argument. You can't start an argument with me from the Hadith, and then I have to go to the Quran and then tell you that the Hadith, or in other words, the arguments have to be based on the Quran. So you have to say something. Oh, this is in the Quran. And then you have to say, oh, and here it is in the Hadith. You can't do it reverse. It's ridiculous.
Okay, and then let's just follow your pattern, your standard here. Okay, so who revealed the Quran to Muhammad?
Allah, through Gabriel.
Through Gabriel. Okay, so when Muhammad says, I have received this revelation from Gabriel, it should be authoritative, should it not?
It is.
Okay, so when we go to this Hadith that I have up here on the screen from Sahih Bukhari, volume 4, book 55, hadith 546, and Muhammad says that since he's being questioned whether or not he's a prophet, and he asks him 3 questions. What is the end of times? What do you eat when you get to heaven? And then why do children resemble their parents? And Muhammad says 2 things that you can't prove, but the one thing that you can prove, he's absolutely wrong on. And we know this hadith is wrong. And we know that since Muhammad said this came from Gabriel, how can we trust Muhammad then? How can we trust Muhammad?
I just said to you, you have to go to the Quran, because we don't know if
he said that he got these revelations from Gabriel. He says he got this revelation. I am listening, but he's saying that he got this from Gabriel. Gabriel's the most authoritative.
Right, but what I'm saying to you is, you're saying that to Sahih Bukhari, that is written in Sahih Bukhari. I'm saying if what you're saying is wrong is in the Quran, I will accept it. If it's not in the Quran, I'm saying you're going backwards. You can't tell me something that somebody wrote down.
I can point out all kinds of things in the Quran that are wrong. No.
So what I'm saying is, if you argue, I'm saying if you bring an argument to me, you have to base it on the Quran first. Then you bring the Hadith, and you can't bring anything in from the Quran to me and tell me it's wrong, and I will explain to you how it's not wrong.
Okay. All right. I'm going to let Royalson go.
Anything in the Quran. I don't care anything you want in the Quran.
That's fine. I'll get there. I'll bring it up. Go ahead, Royalson.
Asana, I want to ask you, how did Muhammad die?
How did he what?
How did Muhammad die?
Die or tie?
Die. How
like in death?
Yes.
Okay. He actually he died from a fever. He basically had an illness. It wasn't from any poison. The poison, that was 3 years before. You don't die from poison 3 years after you have it.
Where do you get that from?
That's insane. Go look it up.
See if you can get.
Wait, I want you to go look it up or whatever. If you might know, tell me any place where you can get poisoned and 3 years die later.
It can damage your internal organs.
It's impossible.
You can have lots of ongoing disease from poison. Yes.
You can what? You can what?
People.
What did you say?
Okay, listen. You have to stop talking so you can
disease
actually
ain't
hear
a
what
poison.
I'm saying. You have to stop talking so you can listen to what I say. Okay? You're very rude. Learn some manners, please.
No, you're actually rude because you cut me off every time I talk.
No. Listen, and I will give you the answer.
You say, how did he die?
Can you mute him, please? Because he's getting very annoying if he's not.
No, you asked me how he died.
He can unmute himself, but I'm going to mute you, Osama. Just let's have a conversation, guys.
Just listen. So, a lot of people, for example, war vets. I mean, a lot of people here would be able to testify to this. War vets who were in, say, Vietnam or other wars had Agent Orange, right, in their system, and that had ongoing long-term effects for their system, right? I mean, you know what I'm talking about, right, Eric?
Yes.
Yeah. So there's many cases of where poisons have very long-term effects, even up until the person dies, right? Even if it carried with them to old age, they can still have the effects of it, where it can affect their respiratory system, it can affect their their cardiac system and all kinds of things.
What's your
point? So my point was
to
respond to you when you were asking, how can a poison, show me anywhere where poison lasts more than 3 years. I'm saying it's very common knowledge that people have suffered long-term effects from poison. For example, I gave one which was Agent Orange, which a lot of war vets were subject to, and it affected them for
don't people die? Don't people die? Didn't John the Baptist get his head cut off? Didn't you say Jesus died for crucifixion? People die. I don't understand the point.
No, but the point that he's trying to make is that poison, when you ingest poison, it can damage your internal organs to the point where you don't die immediately, but it damages them to the point where they are not able to function in a way that allows you to live have a quality of life, and it eventually leads to the deterioration of your health.
So let me tell you what this guy is trying to do. So let me tell you what this guy is trying to do and trying to use the poison as. He's trying to use the hadith, where in the Quran where it says something about the aorta be cut and his right hand will be seized. But that's a stupid analogy because his hand wasn't seized and he didn't die suddenly. Wait, listen.
How do you know his hand wasn't seized?
No, listen. You told me to stop, so now listen. In the Quran it says if he had made up something about us, his right hand would be seized, meaning there would be no more writing. And his aorta would be cut, meaning it would be a sudden death, and he would not have finished the Quran. So since the Quran was finished, there is no that you can't put that with that whole poisoning thing, and so I mean that's why I'm saying it's anecdotal foolishness. You're just trying to use words that sound like other words. How was his hand? How was his right hand? Wait, hold on. How was his right hand seized?
Well, first of all, you made the assertion that his right hand was not seized. So can you please prove that to me? Go ahead.
How was his right hand seized? That means he would not be able to write.
Well, if he died, then he
can't write or read anyway.
No, that's not what I'm talking about. It's saying basically
if he died, he couldn't write anymore. You made the connection about his right hand being seized would mean he couldn't write anymore. Well, if you die, you can't write anymore.
But the Quran was finished. It was completed before he died.
Yeah, so he couldn't write anymore.
It was done. No, it was done. In other words,
so he still couldn't.
Listen.
Doesn't matter.
In the Quran, it's actually saying if he had tried to write something false about us, he would have basically been cut off. That's what it's saying.
Yeah. So first, his right hand is seized, so the
Come on,
he
don't make up
stops.
something.
So he
Don't make
stops
up
the
something.
Quran. Then later he dies.
He said he
I'm
had
just going by your criteria.
The Quran was finished. The Quran was finished. He did a farewell
Yeah.
speech. It was
Yeah.
over. He said, "I gave
Yeah.
you the Quran," which means
Yeah.
which means that he had completed the mission, which means nothing was falsified. See, that's
Well,
what I'm saying. You can't
actually,
just
no. It's
you can't-
falsified by the method in which he dies.
No, you can't just make stuff up, and that's what you're
I'm not
doing.
making it up. It's in your hadith.
It says in the Quran, if he had told us lie on us, that his hand would have. Now listen, would have.
So Muhammad could write.
Look. I want you to listen to what I just said. Would have been seized,
Where is
his
that?
aorta would have been cut. That's
What
a would
surah?
have.
What
It's
surah and
past
ayat
tense.
is that? Asana, what surah and ayat is that? I'm gonna put that up on the screen.
I'm in bed, so I don't know.
You okay? You're not sick, are you? You're not sick, are you?
No, I'm
Okay.
I just did some exercise.
All right. Let me bring it up.
I mean, I'm about to.
It's in 69, verse 44 to 46.
Okay. 16:9.
I just want people to be honest. I don't like anecdotes.
So you believe that Muhammad was not illiterate, right? You believe he could read and write.
I want Eric to find the person, put it up.
I got it up on the screen. All right. Let me
also the word literate. I think people understand what actually that means. It never says he was illiterate. It meant he was unlearned. Maybe not well versed. Maybe did not know the excellency of literature in the sense. Because obviously he wasn't completely illiterate because he dealt with people and he sold goods and stuff. He was, he
couldn't read. I mean, he says it in the opening verses of the Quran. I mean, he says he can't read. He said he could not read.
It says unlearned.
No, it says he cannot read. We read it out of the surah.
Because the angel does not say learn, and he doesn't say I'm not learned. That wouldn't make sense.
No, because
he says read, and he says I cannot read.
That's right. He's talking about but that's what I'm saying. That word read doesn't read like that. It means recite.
What shall I read? Somebody, he pressed me so tightly I thought it was
doesn't say recite.
I said what?
The word. Well, that's too complicated for you, so I'm not even going to get into that. So
have you read the Surat al-Rasulullah by Ibn Asad?
No, I'm saying that's too complicated for you. I'm not even.
No, it's not complicated at all. Give me the source, and let's go through
right here.
Because what they're talking about in those days, poets used to recite, and they used to do that. There wasn't really any too much actual writing going on, so that doesn't mean that the person couldn't think and reason and know basic things.
Tell me about the coverlet of brocade. Could you tell me about that?
A person, and also it shows in the Quran. I mean, not in the Quran, in some of the external books that you're talking about. By the time he did get on, pass away, he was writing. He was reading and writing.
Okay, no, that's fine. Could you tell me?
But wait a minute.
Tell me about the coverlet of brocade.
I have it up on the screen. Here it is. Right here, Yusuf Ali. I'll read Yusuf Ali. Unto Allah leads straight way, but there are ways that turn aside. If Allah willed, he could have guided all of you. Verse 10. It is he who sends down rain from the sky. You drink. What is this? Maybe was this the right verse, guys? With it, he produces corn. What is this? This wasn't the right one. Did I get the wrong one? Chapter 16, verses
69.
No, it's 69. Chapter 69.
Oh, sorry.
Verse 44 to 46. But what Sana is wrong about is that it actually says
Sana's not wrong about anything.
Okay.
What he mistakes about is that.
Why don't you wait till Eric pulls it up?
Okay, it's right here. It says, "The messenger went with that any sayings in our name. We should certainly seize him by his right hand.
I don't dispute the verse.
We should certainly then cut off his artery of his heart.
Right, past tense.
And we should certainly then, that's not past tense, that's forward tense. Then.
No, it's not. It's read it again. Or put another translation if that one's too difficult. But that's past tense.
Let's go with Pickthall. And if he had invented false sayings concerning us.
If he had. Now keep in mind, if he had.
And if he had invented, if he had.
Which means he didn't.
We surely would take him by the right hand. Well, I'm getting to that. We surely taken him by the right hand, and then severed his life artery. Okay, so this brings us. Okay,
right. But he uses a past for life artery as well. So what?
No. Listen.
But hey, Eric,
listen.
It's DL.
Listen.
Yeah, DL. Hold on. Let's let other people talk.
1 second.
Surah 69. Surah 69 was the 78th revelation in the order of the revelation.
It
so
doesn't matter.
was far from being complete.
So whether he's making an argument about it being past tense, you still had numerous surahs that were still to come, because this is
Right.
surah
No.
69 and
That's
78
silly. That's
in
silly.
the order
That's a
of
silly
Revelation.
argument.
So
That's
you
a silly
failed.
argument.
You failed like you
That's a
always
silly
do,
argument.
Asana.
Let me tell you why it's a silly argument. It's a silly argument. That's like me just saying to you, Jesus said that he only came to save the house of Israel. You're going to say, oh, well, then that changed at another time or whatever. No. If you're going to insist that things are the way they are, no, listen, if you're going to insist,
an appropriate parallel would be to say,
it makes no
Isaiah
logical sense. You
did
can't
Isaiah
listen.
prophesy
It makes
before Ezekiel did.
But listen,
He did.
it makes
He
no
prophesied
logical
2
sense.
centuries before
Daryl,
Ezekiel did.
it makes no logical sense what you're saying, because
you are
the
denying the
point
progressiveness
that the
of
man,
Revelation,
the point,
which
Daryl,
Islam claims.
the point that the
Okay,
man pointed out was that verse. He said that verse was the verse that said basically that it would happen. The verse actually says if he had. So you can't go into the future and say, well, there's something was revealed
If it
later
was the
that doesn't apply to
114th
later.
surah revealed and it was
It doesn't make sense what you're
then I'd
saying.
accept your position. But we're
It said
talking
if
about
Okay, I have a.
in order of
It says if he had. Just admit it.
Okay,
just admit
Asana, let me do
Just admit
this.
you're
Okay,
wrong. I mean, God's sakes.
Asana, hold on a second. Okay, you said
Don't
if
be a liar.
you got something wrong, Asana, come on, dude, calm down today. You're
Mute this
all
guy.
up on us today. Let's chill.
I'm saying it says if he had.
It's okay.
I don't understand why
you know what the
people
thing
can't
is? I know what the thing is. Is that Ramadan? You guys, I get this way too. When I don't eat and I don't drink anything, I get a
I'm
headache.
not hungry.
I gotta have my
I'm not
Snickers,
hungry.
man.
ain't missing no meals.
I'm not hungry.
Okay. All right. Now listen. When you said he did not reveal anything that was wrong, right? That's your position. Everything in the Quran is from Allah, and it is correct. All right. So when we go to chapter 12, verse 20 of the Quran, here you have Muhammad narrating an event that comes out of the book of Genesis. I think, I can't remember the exact, maybe you guys can look this up, where Joseph is sold into slavery. Tell me what verse that is, what chapter and verse that is. But here you have Joseph being sold into slavery according to Muhammad. And notice what Joseph is sold into slavery for. He's not sold into slavery for shekels, as it is explained in the Bible. He's sold into slavery for dirhams. Now, dirhams were not invented until 1,000 years after Joseph lived. That's number one. This is a Persian and Greek currency, and it did not exist at the time of Joseph. But number two, and more importantly, coins did not exist at the time of Joseph. They did not use coins. So when we start talking about shekels, shekels is not a coin as it is today. Today we would say, okay, shekels is a coin, but it's not. It wasn't at the time. A shekel is a weighted amount. So when you say, okay, he didn't bring anything that was wrong, here we can prove not only through how we do history, but how we do archaeology today, that Muhammad got this wrong. This is not true, and we can prove it.
Understand at the time.
What's that? Who's talking?
Language
Kenny. Hi, Kenny. Okay. What's that now? Go ahead.
I'm saying that this was language that the people could understand at the time. It was revealed in the Arabic language to Arabic-speaking people, and it was revealed in terms that they could understand. So it's not to be taken literal that it was dirhams, and that'd be far-fetched to even presume or assume or suggest.
Why would that be far-fetched if this is supposed to be the eternal spoken word of God, good for all time? Why is this not pertinent today?
Well, once again, it's speaking in the Arabic language, and it's speaking in terms in which the people of that time could understand.
Where does it say? Can you show us that in the Quran? Where
I mean, look, in the Bible,
if Hassan is going to be consistent, Hassan, if you're going to be consistent here, you're going to have to show us through the. No. Don't go into the Bible. If you're going to be consistent, go because we're talking about. You asked me to produce something for you. I just showed it to you.
It's not wrong.
What's that?
I'm saying it's not wrong. Because a value is a value, in whether different coinages are used or not. If you go into when you go to currency exchange, you go to, like, if I go to London, there's going to be what do you call it, the pound? Things are measured in the pound, right? But like I said, in the Bible, it does it when it talks about the weight of the what is his name?
Shekel.
No, it talks about the weight. It talks about what they had in pounds for Jesus when it came with the spices. It talks about when who is it? Nicodemus and Josephine. who picked them up? John Aramea, Joseph of Aramea,
Arimathea.
Right. Right. It says in two parts of the Bible. One, it says it was 100 pounds. Somebody else said it was a 70 pounds, but it was I guess it was according to different measurements or whatever. But it was either 70 or 100. So either it's wrong or there was two types of things. When we talk about the death of Jesus, some people say it was this time, and then Darrell will say, well, one was Roman time calculation.
We can have an entire show on that if you want to, and I have no
Just
problem
saying.
doing
I'm
it, but
just
I would
saying,
kind of
doesn't
like to
make it
stay
wrong
on
if you use
topic
different-
here when we start talking about, is Muhammad leading you on the path to heaven?
I said he
And
was.
well, what I'm saying is that he's not.
So
If he's getting easily known facts at that time, facts that are known today, if he's getting them wrong.
Let me ask you a very important question.
We're using the excuse now, well, we can only use the Quran. Well,
No.
The Quran,
Let me ask you a very important question.
It's not working out.
No, because
if
you're
you're
not
asking
sticking
a person-
to what we're saying.
If you're asking a person, does somebody lead them on the right path, and they know they're on the right path, and you're thinking they're not on the right path because they don't agree with you, that's a horrible. It's even a horrible conversation. I know I'm on the right path. You think you're on the right path.
You think we're not on the right path, right?
No, I think you're on
Am I
your
right?
path, and I think you're on your path.
Am I going to
And
heaven?
Are we on the right
Listen,
path?
I think
Are
you're
we on
on
the
your
right
path.
path?
I think you believe it's right, but I don't believe.
I'm not asking you that. Do you think we are on the right path?
I think some of you are on the right path because you have certain intentions and you really do show compassion and love for humanity. And I think others of you are not on the right path because you just believe in something just to believe in it, and you have no good intentions in your heart, have no love, no faith.
So
even
that's
Jesus
just
said,
being
even
horrible.
Jesus
That's
said,
just
will he
being
find faith
mean.
in you? Will Jesus find
See,
faith
according
in
to
you when
you.
he returns? When
If
Jesus,
you're
will
going to
Jesus
tell
find
us that
faith
we're
in
not
you?
on the right path.
Okay, we
Let me
have
ask you a
Veritas.
question.
Hold on
Let
a
me ask you a
second.
question.
Veritas has
Let me
had
ask
his
you a
hand up
question.
for. Okay, hurry it up, and Veritas.
Let me
We're
ask
going
you
to
a
bring
question.
Veritas on.
And I want
Jesus said-
Asana to
Jesus
please
said
mute
if-
yourself while Veritas is speaking, because
Jesus
you
said-
have
Jesus
been
said-
interrupting so much of the time. Please.
Jesus said, if you cannot heal people, you don't even believe. Can you heal people?
Where does he say that?
We're not talking about that.
He actually said that.
Where does it say that?
He said
Go
they
ahead.
couldn't heal because they don't believe. When his disciples
He's
couldn't
diverting
heal
the
people,
topic.
he said the reason why they can't heal because they don't believe. So
Okay.
if Christians
All right.
cannot heal, that means they don't believe.
All right, send me that topic and we'll have it next week. All right, Veritas, go ahead. Veritas, go ahead. You're up.
Yeah, no problem. I was hoping Robert would get up there. It's kind of nice.
Robert, yeah, I see Robert's has his hand up too, but
anyway, I'm
Robert's-
going to make this.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll do this really quick. I'm just going to say, look, at Tabari said the chronology of Surah 2252 was revealed at the satanic verses, that Satan puts words in the mouths of every prophet. Now, the point is, if that's true, and it's obvious that he was influenced by he had a satanic influence on his life, because there's so many threads of Islamic tradition admitting this, including historians, including hadith and everything else. So why would you, Osama, let me ask you a question. If that's true, how can you trust the Quran? If Satan put words on his tongue, and according to the Quran, Satan puts words on the mouths of all prophets, why do you trust the Quran, especially since it violates previous revelation?
Are you asking me? And you really want me to answer you? Because I don't want you to stop me when I talk.
With the criteria,
that's
though.
That's the theme. That's
okay,
the theme here.
All right. Yeah, I'll let you answer. Just one other point. Would the criteria, though, for that also be that the Quran is not really a confirmation of previous revelation? Isn't that the criteria for validating the Quran? And if it's not, wouldn't that be a deception?
No. The Quran validates, corrects, and the Quran validates, corrects, and confirms the previous scriptures. Those previous scriptures are also my book too. So don't think that they're just the Quran. I know all those books, and I studied all of those books, and they're all from Allah. So we can see, like, for instance,
does it validate the death, burial, and resurrection? Does it validate the death, burial, and resurrection of the Messiah?
You said I could answer, but now you change your mind?
Yeah, go ahead. No, I'm just looking for a specific point.
Okay. So like I said, as you see from the Old Testament to the New Testament, when you get to the New Testament, it's saying things that the Old Testament never actually says. So that's why you have the Jews confused with Jesus, and they reject Jesus, and they call Jesus a demon inside.
Well,
of the
you
New
have to be
Testament.
specific on what the New Testament actually affirms that the New Testament,
You
Old
asked me a
Testament doesn't.
question. You asked me a question.
You got to give. when you make a
in the
claim, you got to give a
in the New
specific
Testament,
reference.
in the New Testament, the Jews actually say that Jesus is possessed and has a demon.
What is the
So
context? Context,
So
Asana.
the context is what I'm saying is every time the prophets come, they always accuse them of being possessed and evil, and they always reject them. And they always and everything they bring, the other people say this what you brought should not have been brought, just like they did
But that's
with
not an
Jesus.
accusation. Satan
Yeah.
put words on Muhammad's tongue. Satan never
listen what
put
I
words
just
on
said.
Jesus' tongue.
Listen what I just
That's
said.
an improper. That's an improper parallel,
So you didn't want me
because
to answer.
Satan
So
never
you
put
didn't want
words
me
on
to
the
answer.
tongue of Jesus. It
So
was
you
only an
didn't want me to
accusation.
answer.
Muhammad
So you didn't.
admitted to the fact that
So
Satan
you.
puts words on the prophet's tongue.
No, he
Okay?
didn't. No,
That's a
no,
different.
no.
Yes, he did. According to
Muhammad
Tabari.
Listen,
According to
Tabari is not
Tabari.
Muhammad. That's why I keep saying stop your anecdotes. Muhammad
Okay,
never
so
said
when
that.
was Sir?
You can't say
So
Muhammad said something
2252
and he
admits
didn't
that.
say it. You can't
Sir,
say Muhammad
2252
said.
admits that.
Listen, you can't say Muhammad
Sir,
said it. Muhammad didn't
2252
say it.
admits it.
No, it doesn't. You're making
Yeah,
stuff
Sir,
up. You
22.
Let's
gotta
post the
stop
verse.
Sir,
Post the
22.
verse.
20,
What's
And
the
don't
verse
ask
post the
again?
me to
verse. I'm
answer.
getting off the mic.
Okay, hold up,
2252.
guys. Hold up. What is it?
2252.
The Quran 2252.
Don't ask me to answer something and then talk while I'm talking.
Quran
That's why I
2252.
said. That's why I said. Are you sure you want me to answer?
Okay.
I'm
wasn't
bringing up
sure.
2252. Give me a second, guys. It's okay. We don't need to be rushing through this. 2252.
Oh my goodness. You brought the crazies out.
2252. Let me read it. Never sent we a messenger or a prophet before thee, but when he recited the message Satan proposed in respect. Let's see. Satan proposed. I don't understand that. Opposite in respect. This opposition. That's an insertion. That's not even part of it. In respect of that which he recited thereof, but Allah abolisheth that which Satan proposes. Then Allah Okay, hold on. Then Allah establishes his revelations. Allah is knower and wiser. So here you have Satan proposed in respect that which he recited, but Allah abolishes what Satan cast. From what we're reading here, is Allah is coming back and abolishing what Satan had cast on Muhammad's lips.
Exactly.
Yeah. Exactly. What Satan had spoken through the prophet is what it's saying.
Prophet Muhammad.
No.
That's what it's saying.
Not what it says. It doesn't say he spoke anything. It says basically Satan tries to tempt the prophet to say something or do something, and then Allah throws it out so it doesn't get in his book. And
but he actually did it in Tabari. He actually acknowledged the gods of the pagans. Yes, he did in Tabari.
Listen, stop talking Tabari. Get into the Quran, you jerk. Come on, stop it.
Sana, let's calm down.
Okay, I'll take back the
him.
All right,
Because
be nice. All right, Royalson, go ahead. Royalson, go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. First of all, I think it'd be good to mute him because he's.
I'm gonna, Hassan, I'm gonna get your address after this show, and I'm gonna send you a box of Snickers, dude. You need. Hold on, go ahead, Royalson, go.
Okay, so it's interesting to see in this discussion when we bring up a hadith, he says, "Don't bring up the hadith. Bring me the Quran." Then, when we talk about certain things, he goes, "Well, in some external books, it says some things about Muhammad here." So it's okay for him to bring up external books. It's not okay for us. Then when I asked him, how did Muhammad die? He said, well, he got a fever. I bet you that Asana cannot point to a hadith where it says, to a verse in the Quran where it says that Muhammad got a fever. Am I right, Asana? Just a yes or no question.
Well, if he got a fever and died, you wouldn't expect to have that in the Quran, but you would expect to have a hadith.
The Quran doesn't mention how Muhammad died, because the Quran is not about Muhammad.
The Quran does not mention about Muhammad's death, but you told me that he died of a fever. That you said he died of a fever, and you didn't get that from the Quran. So you're getting it from somewhere else other than the Quran. Then when Veritas brings up Al-Tabri, you don't like that either. It's amazing. We're bringing up all these Muslim sources and you don't like it. You can bring up external books when you like it, but you don't like it when we do it.
Okay, so let me just tell you this, Royal. The Quran is not about Muhammad. It is not about the life of Muhammad. The Quran is about Allah, the Most High, the Creator that created you and me, the God, your God and my God. That's what the Quran is about. All this talk about Muhammad, quite frankly, is irrelevant.
It's very relevant.
Yes, it's irrelevant.
Very relevant.
Just
very
like
relevant.
that. That's why in the story of Jesus, there's not. You don't get the life story of Jesus. You only get the 3 years that he did his preaching, because essentially It's irrelevant. His whole life is irrelevant. It only was relevant what God sent Jesus to do and what God sent Muhammad to do and what God sent the rest of the prophets to do. That's why you fell into a trap and believe Jesus is God, because
No,
you
but
got too wrapped up, and then you started calling created beings your Lord.
Okay, let's get back to this matter of the dreams, okay? So I want you to tell me this hadith, because you were bringing up this objection. You were saying, well, we don't believe in every hadith. Some hadiths are false.
I didn't
some
say
are
we
this and that.
nothing. I'm
Just
talking
wait,
for
just a
myself.
moment. I'm talking.
I'm not a.
So,
It's not a
so
monolith.
I want you to tell me, go through this hadith and tell me, is this hadith not authentic? And if so, why not? Go ahead. Sahih Bukhari, volume 9, book 87, number 114.
187. What was the last one?
So, no, it's volume 1. Oh, sorry, volume 9, book 87, number 114.
But I just told you it's inconsequential. I don't understand why you're
No,
doing
no.
this.
I'm asking you if that's an authentic hadith or not.
Why would it concern me? It's
It's
inconsequential.
because it's based on the topic. It's on the topic.
Oh, okay. I don't see how.
Have you read it? Have you read it?
I'm saying, I just told you. I said that the Quran, right? I said it's about Allah, not about Muhammad and every little thing
I'm
Muhammad
asking
did.
you, have you read the hadith?
I don't know. He has to bring it up.
Well, then how do you know it's not relevant?
Because the Quran is relevant, and the Quran doesn't talk about.
What's the topic? What's the topic of today? What's the topic of today?
The topic of today was, does Muhammad lead people on the right path? I'm saying I'm on the right path, so it must be true.
So
since I'm on
we're
the right
looking
path, it
about
must be
Muhammad.
true.
Thank you. So we're looking at Muhammad. So that's why we're going to the hadith.
Okay, here's what 114 says. It says, this is Sahih Bukhari, volume 9, book 87, number 114. It says, the Prophet said, if any one of you sees a dream that he likes, then it is from Allah, and he should thank Allah for it and narrate it to others. But if he sees something else, i.e. a dream that he dislikes, then it is from Satan, and he should seek refuge with Allah from its evil, and he should not mention it to anybody, for it will harm him.
Okay. So
okay, what's wrong with that? I just
I'm asking you, is that authentic?
It's not a matter of authenticity. I don't understand. It's just somebody's saying something. It's like me saying something. It's not like it said you people
Is it
believe
authentic?
this. It didn't tell you to believe that or whatever. But
is it authentic?
Maybe it is. Maybe it is. I don't know. Usually they tell you right there. Well, hold it.
Because you don't know. You don't know why I'm using it. So I will explain to you why I'm using it.
Asana, let him talk. Asana, let him talk.
No, Eric, I have to tell you this because he asked was it authentic or not. Right there, if you look on the screen where you pulled it up, it should have whether it's authentic or not. It'll say, is it Daesh or is it it'll have a different words. Or does it or say Sahih? It'll give you a code like Sahih, Daesh.
It doesn't reference this here. I'll look and see if
it's on the bottom. It's on the bottom. Like in the where it's telling you the references are. And this will say like what the source is Daesh.
It does not say. It doesn't say here. Let me.
I'll
go ahead. And
I'll accept it.
Okay. All right. Okay. So the reason why I brought this up is because Muhammad's revelation at Hira was a dream that he didn't like. So it was from Satan.
He didn't have a
according
dream.
to his criteria.
That wasn't a dream.
Yes, it was a dream.
The cave wasn't a dream.
Pardon?
We talking about when he was in the cave when Gabriel came?
At Hira, yes.
That's not a dream. What is wrong with
you? Yes, it is. Yes, it was.
It wasn't a dream.
Okay. Were you here at the beginning when I gave the sources?
It wasn't a dream. He saw Gabriel for real in real life.
Were you here at the beginning?
Well, you need to go back and tell me how that was a dream. Because the revelation was a dream.
Okay, so, let me read out of the. Okay, you go ahead and pull up the.
But where you
basing? So I'm going to go ahead and read from the Sirah. I'm reading it from the Sirah. Give me a second here.
I'll give you the hadith sources. Okay, so
this is from.
But that wasn't a dream.
Okay, so volume 9, book 87.
Also,
number 111.
Also, the revelation, the crime happened over 23 years. So, what you saying? He was dreaming for 23 years?
No. I'm talking about his initial revelation, Asana. Okay.
Okay. Well, it didn't say the Quran doesn't say there was any type of dream.
Sorry.
So if it doesn't say in the
explaining to
Quran, I'm
you.
not going to
Sorry,
accept
listen.
it.
Okay, well
I'm
here's
explaining to you.
let me just say this. Let me just say this because you keep going back. The Quran doesn't say. The Quran doesn't say about Muhammad. The Quran doesn't say this about Muhammad.
Yeah, I can't. Thank
Okay,
you.
no, hold on. Let me make my point. So when we start saying, okay, is Muhammad leading people on the right path? We don't have hardly. The Quran mentions Muhammad 4 times. I think it did.
Exactly.
Okay, so when we're asking the question, is Muhammad leading people on the right path, and we go back and see what Muhammad did, you're saying you can't do that because we have to go by the Quran. Well, if the Quran only mentions 4 times, how the heck do you know what to say in the Shahada? Muhammad's name is not mentioned in the Shahada.
Exactly, because that's called the second Shahada. It's not there's 2 Shahadas. There's 1 and 2.
Okay, so if I want to be a Muslim today, I have to take the second Shahada. Am I correct?
It depends where you are.
Well, let's say I'm right here.
No,
I'm right here. Am I going to be a Muslim? There's no God but Allah, and Muhammad is
the right Shahada. There's no God but Allah. That is a Shahada in and of itself. The second Shahada is usually when you go someplace, they're basically saying,
and why do we have to say Muhammad is his prophet?
If
it's not in the Quran, if it's not in the Quran, why do we have to say it?
No, in the Quran, they have them separated because they're supposed to be separated. So there is no God but Allah is in the Quran, and then Muhammad is his messenger is also in the Quran. So those are separate shahadas, though. But you say them together. The shahada saying you say them together because I guess it's convenient to say at one time. But no, the actual shahada is there's no Allah, no God but Allah.
Oh come on! Now there's 2 shahadas.
There are 2 shahadas. Go look it up. Go look it up. Sneak them wrong. Go look it up.
Okay, I'm going to read something here from the Sirah. Wilson, I'm going to let you go right
you
after I
don't
get
know.
done.
I know.
Asana, I'm going to read this to you.
I'm hyped up, huh?
This is Asana. Okay, I'm going to read this to you. This is straight from the Sirah. This is the biography of Muhammad on page 106. And it's talking about how Muhammad received his original and the initial revelation in the cave of Hira. And it says, Gabriel brought him the command of God. He came to me, said the apostle of God, while I was asleep. So that means he be dreaming. Go ahead, Royalson.
Well, thank you. Yeah.
Which biography is that?
This is Ibn Hisham. This is Ibn Hisham. Sirat Rasulullah. This one right here.
Yeah, but you can have a vision also. You don't have. You can have a vision.
But it doesn't say vision. It says
dream. It says he was asleep.
It just says while he was asleep.
It did say. Let me read it again. I don't know. Maybe I didn't read it right. I don't know. It's in English. It's not in Arabic, so that might be an issue too. I don't know.
But also, Asana, you can also take this one.
But no, Eric, don't even bother because it's not even matter to what I'm saying.
It says
go ahead,
while he was asleep. Royalson, cite the hadith, please.
Go ahead, Royal.
Okay, just a second. First of all, Asana, you're on our show, so you need to show some respect.
What is it? What kind of show is it? Is it a separatist show? You said our show. Is it separatist?
This is a discussion group, and this is where we discuss. We don't.
So then it
would be my show too.
You're a guest.
Then it'll be my show too.
Do you have your own show?
Discussion group.
You're a guest.
If it's called the Cross of the Crescent, you can't.
I'm sure your parents taught you better manners than this.
Come on. All right. Come on. Let's Royalson. Go ahead and cite those hadith. Go ahead.
Okay. So volume 6. Book 60, number 479.
Okay, volume 6, book 160, number.
No, volume 6, book 60.
60, okay. We only have 7 minutes left, by the way. Go ahead.
That's right. And then number 479 and 480.
Okay. Book of Tafsir, Sahih Bukhari. Okay, let me bring it up, put it up on the screen. All right, go ahead. What number was it? 160, you said?
No. Volume 6. Number 479, 479, and 480.
Oh my gosh, this is going to 479 and 80. All right, got it. 478, 479. It reads, the commencement of the divine inspiration to Allah's apostle was in the form of true dreams. The angel came to him and said, read in the name of your Lord who has created all that exists. He created man a clot. Read, and your Lord is most generous. Number 480, the commencement of the divine inspirations, Allah's apostle was in the form of true dreams. This is not a vision, it's just dreams. And the angel came to him and said, read in the name of your Lord, who has created all that exists in man from clot. Read, and your Lord is most generous, who has taught the writings by pen. The first person to write was Prophet Idris.
Okay. So, Asana, there you see it says the word dreams. Now, Muhammad's dream that he didn't like, according to his own criteria, from Bukhari, Volume 9, Book 87 is 114.
First of all, the thing
that
that
is
said
from
dreams,
Satan.
where did you read that from?
This is from Bukhari, Sahih Bukhari, Volume 6, Book 60, numbers 479 and both 480, reference
Okay, so
dreams.
again, I'm going to
They
throw
say
it out.
dreams.
Like I said, if it doesn't say it in the Quran, I'm sorry, it just doesn't mean anything.
Okay, excellent. Okay, so guys, here we see what's happened, and I predicted this would happen, is that
you're a prophet,
when we show a way to check Muhammad if he is a true prophet or not, right? Using his own words, we're going to look at that. Then we have Asana coming along and saying, no, it needs to be in the Quran. Why? Because Asana assumes the Quran to be a true revelation from Allah. What we're saying is, no, we're going to go by Muhammad's words first before we assume that it's going to be a true revelation from Allah. Because you check out the prophet first. You don't assume what he's saying is true. You first test the prophet. That's the way that it works. You test the prophet, then you see whether it's true or false. If it's true, then you accept those words. So, Asana, you appealing to the Quran first as the word of Allah, you've skipped the step, which is where you check out Muhammad first. You test him to see if he's a true prophet.
Did you test Jesus first? Did you test Jesus first?
If you test that he's a true prophet and he comes up being a true prophet,
did you test Jesus first?
Then you can say, okay,
I just defeated you with your own argument.
Now I will accept the Quran. But
did you test Jesus
Muhammad
first?
failed,
hey, Asana, we're stay on topic, please.
He's not going to answer my question.
Therefore, we do not accept what is in the Quran. There you go. And by the way, just to remind you, the topic for today is not about Jesus. It's about Muhammad. It's not about the Trinity. It's about Muhammad. It's not about the Bible. It's about Muhammad. So nice try. We're looking at Muhammad. We say, no, he's not a true prophet because he failed his own test. And of course, that's not going to be in the Quran because the Quran is a separate book or a separate collection from Muhammad's sayings.
Okay, we're going to bring Olga on. We're going to bring Olga. Olga's had his hand up, and then we're going to have to cut it out, guys.
Okay.
We got 3 minutes. Go ahead, Olga.
Yeah. There was a time when we have a discussion like this on the show before, something similar to this. And when Asana left the show, what Asana did, Asana went to Facebook and he made a video about me and a guy called BC Kutu. And what he says in the video, he says the hadith is for the believers. He actually said that in his video. I could find the video if he didn't delete it. He said the hadith is for the believers. And what he's telling you, to come like a stupid goat and come into Islam, and then when you come and gather and get the Bible, get the Quran in your head, then that's the time you're gonna find out that Muhammad is a false prophet. The first thing you gotta do is look at the root where a person is coming from. If someone called you and said, "Hey, I have this thing to sell to you and all this stuff," you're gonna see if this. You go to the Better Business Bureau and see if this person is legitimate. What Asana wants you to do is go to the Quran first and then go to Muhammad second. No, you need to go to Muhammad first and then go to the Quran. He asks the question. He says, did we test Jesus? Yes, we did test Jesus by his followers who were around him, what they say about him. The people who love Jesus, what they say about him. The people who love Muhammad is saying a lot of nasty things about Muhammad walking with semen on his clothes and all this nastiness. What prophet walk around with semen on their clothes? Another thing that Muhammad did is take a bath in sewage water.
Hey,
what
Royal.
prophet take a bath in sewage water?
Hey, Royal.
Those are the things that we need to look at instead of listening to this all-headed nonsense.
Hey, Royal, at least you spoke English. Now, Olga just said a bunch of scatter stuff. He just says, like, he likes to talk filthy. He's disgusted.
The
So
prophet is disgusting. He's the one
no,
walking
you're
around with
disgusting.
semen on his
Why
clothes.
do you like to talk about semen every time you talk? It's like semen, semen, semen. Like, come on.
And
All
why
right.
did those
Jesus
people like
ain't
to
running
talk
around
about
talking
Muhammad
about
semen?
semen.
Why does
Follow
those people
Jesus,
talk about
brother.
Muhammad semen?
Follow Jesus. Have a better decorum. Have a good decorum. Follow
Okay,
Jesus.
guys, we don't want to end on that note, so I'm going to end us on a good note.
As long as you don't say semen.
Okay, I'm going to send you a box of Snickers, Asana.
You need some food.
Okay, guys, this is always a lot of fun to get on here, and I do beg and ask you guys, look, when we get into these sessions, it gets really contentious, especially when we start talking about our deepest held core values and beliefs. So if we don't want to make it personal. We want to make it about the topic at hand. When we do discuss this, Royalson, again, I appreciate you getting up at 3 o'clock this morning and having that that discussion with us. When we look at if Muhammad leads people on the right path, we naturally have to go to Hadith, because if he's only mentioned 4 times in the Quran, how would we know that he is the standard of conduct, as it says in the Quran, to follow? So when we look at Muslims across the globe, why are they fasting during the month of Ramadan? Why do they walk around the Kaaba, 7 times? Why do they say the things they do? Well, you have to go back to the Hadith. And so when we evaluate the Hadith, sometimes there's a lot of difficulties in that, like we noticed today, the Hadith about the dreams, the Hadith, I'm not going to sit there and go through a detailed analysis of it. So we have to evaluate that based on how Muslims view it. We have to evaluate it based on how Christians view it. And then we have to make a determination, is he somebody that is leading people to heaven? Are they on the right path? And I would like to have a show, I don't know if any of you would like to or not, have a show on the straight path, the book that is supposedly supposed to lead people on the path, which is the Sharia. I would love to do a show and have a discussion on that someday. Royalson, we have one more segment for you to do. And that is going to be, does the Quran lead people on the right path? Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. And
Okay.
yeah, I'll try my best to wrap it all up, because I could see that there's a lot of interaction that goes on. What I would say is I hope that in the future, when we do future shows, maybe we could make it that when one person speaks, the others are muted or something like that.
Well, it's hard
just
to do
out
that.
of respect for the other people.
I know, and it's hard to do that because people, and we noticed that people got on here today, and I don't have that Zoom program where you can mute people. As soon as they come on the show, they can unmute themselves. So they get on there and say all those nasty things that those guys were as soon as we started talking about Muhammad. So next week we're going to see if the Quran is leading people on the right path. Let me say, I don't know if we're going to do it next Sunday. And the reason why I say that, here in the United States, it's Mother's Day. Do you guys have Mother's Day in New Zealand?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't know if I could get away with doing a show in the middle of Mother's Day, to be honest with you. I think I better.
It's a better topic.
What, Mother's Day?
No. The
Quran. Okay.
Quran.
All right. Well, we're gonna.
I imagine Royal. I imagine in that topic, in that conversation, you're not going to bring hadith if you're talking about the Quran being a path, right? You're not going to be bringing up hadith, because that would make sense.
I'll be bringing up a lot of the Quran, but
right, because that would make sense to bring up the hadith if you're talking about the Quran being a path.
Well, I have a lot of material for the Quran also. That
you understand what I'm saying, though? If the question is the Quran, you can't bring other stuff in to actually.
What about the historical method?
I'll see what I want to use, and then
I'll
use it.
Well, let me ask you this, Asana.
I'm just saying, if I'm on there, I'm going to.
Okay, but can we bring in the historical method?
Well, I think we need to ask his permission.
Well, no. I'm just saying. What type of evidence are you going to?
Don't be a hater, dude. Stop being a hater.
Okay, are you going to accept evidence based on how we do history?
You mean as far as compilation of the Quran or something like that?
Well, no. How we evaluate historical or how we evaluate assertions of the Quran, like the one that I referenced today.
Well, like I said,
we know.
Oh, yeah, long as it's about the Quran, that's fine.
Okay, all right. All right. Well, let's plan to do that next week. I'm going to send out, let me say this, I'll send out a message on Facebook, and I'll IM everybody and let you know if we're going to be able to do it next week. If not, then we'll just push it to the 17th and bring it up from there. Folks, we're going to go ahead and rock on out of here. Thank you, everybody, for coming. I appreciate all of you coming in and the interaction that we've had quite a few people get on mic today. Thank you for coming in and getting on mic, bringing us your thoughts, and engaging in discussion. And we will see you next time on The Cross and the Crescent.